Hi, my name is Laura Blevins,
I'm Alexis Lacewell.
And I'm Sarah Freer.
and our group is assigned Chapter 6, Purchasing, and I'm going to start us off. So what is purchasing? Purchasing is also termed as procurement. It is a process of securing the right product for a facility at the right time in a form that meets pre-established standards for quantity, quality, and price. There are 8 steps to the flow of purchasing. Step 1 is to identify needs by planning new or reviewing existing menus for each business unit of the food service organization. Step 2 is to determine standards of quality and write the specifications for each food item. Step 3 is to estimate the quantities needed. Step 4, calculate the desired inventory or stock levels for each item. Step 5 is to identify the amounts to be purchased. This can be done by subtracting stock levels from desired quantities. Step 6 is to develop purchase orders. Step 7 is to conduct market research on potential vendors' product availability. And the final step is to negotiate with vendors. Market. The market. The term market has several meanings. It refers to several concepts related to the products available for purchase and the processes involved in moving them from the original source of supply to the point of service. Sometimes the term market is used in reference to commodities, which are the raw agricultural products used to produce foods. An example, meat, grain, and milk markets. Markets can also refer to the geographic locations of the growing or production regions of food sources. And commodities and geographic location are collectively referred to as the primary market. A market can also refer to a collection of activities that results in a transfer of ownership of food from producer to consumer. This is known as market distribution. Market distribution. Food is distributed from sources to consumers through a series of market channels. By definition, a market channel is a segment of the distribution process where an exchange of ownership occurs. A market channel's components include growing, harvesting, storage, processing, manufacturing, transportation, packaging, and distribution. For example, a farmer who grows corn will sell the post-harvest product to a mill where the corn is processed into corn meal. This farmer-to-mill exchange is an example of a channel. Today, there's a lot of interest in reducing, possibly eliminating some middle channels and purchase directly from the original source. The food service operations are seeking to purchase from local producers. In the change of ownership, there is a change in form and additional cost. Costs increase at each point of exchange and are passed along to consumer at the point of selling. So who guides the process of exchange? Middlemen, or intermediaries. They act as a channel between the manufacturers, distributors, and consumers. The 2 most common middlemen who influence the food service segment are brokers and manufacturers' representatives. A broker or a brokerage firm serves as a sales rep for a manufacturer or a group of manufacturers. They're paid on commission by the manufacturers, often a percentage of the product sold to distributors or directly to the end user. They make money on volume move, so they mainly work with large food service and distribution companies. Manufacturers' representatives may visit a food service to introduce a new product and provide samples. A little bit about understanding the market. A few factors that affect our food market are adverse growing conditions, which can affect food prices, unusual consumer demands and seasonal variations. Some foods are perishable and have greater price fluctuations during the year. For example, most fruits and vegetables are considered best at high production season. The exchange of information between seller and buyer is made possible through multiple platforms. Media, trade association, newsletters, magazines, and meetings, local and federal market reports, press research reports, sales reps, and visits to the market. A little bit on market regulation. The U.S. Foods and Inspection Programs are used to evaluate quality and safety of foods. They evaluate foods for signs of disease, bacteria, chemicals, infestation, filth, or any other factor that may render food law and regulation requirements. Foods shipped in interstate commerce must meet state and local regulations that are at least equal to federal regulations. The two main bodies regulating our food system are the USDA and the FDA. The USDA's Food Safety and Inspection Act is responsible for enforcing the Meat, Poultry, and Egg Inspection Acts. Those are 3 separate acts. The FDA enforces 3 main safety acts: the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, the Fair Packaging and Labeling Act, and the Nutritional Labeling and Education Act. According to the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, food is considered adulterated if it contains substances that are injurious to health. Any part is filthy, prepared or held under unsanitary conditions, or it contains portions of diseased animals. The FDA enforces standards of identity, quality, and fill under the Packaging and Labeling Act. And under the Nutrition, Education, and Labeling Act, the FDA enforces our labeling requirements, which were first made mandatory with the passage of the Fair Packaging and Labeling Act of 1966. A few additional agencies that are involved in our food inspection and regulation: National Marine and Fisheries Services, the EPA, which actually creates tolerance levels for pesticide residues in food, establishing the safety of new pesticides and providing education or educational materials on the safe use of pesticides. The EPA also sets standards for the safety of water. The Public Health Service is another agency, and ATF in the Department of Treasury is responsible for the monitoring and production and distribution and labeling of alcoholic beverages. So a little bit about the buyer and the process of purchasing. Food supplies for a food service organization may be purchased by an individual, purchasing department, or through a co-op arrangement with other institutions. Purchasing requires knowledge of internal and external factors, as well as legal requirements. A few internal factors include customers, menus, recipes, labor availability, and skills. And examples of external factors would be the marketing system, food standards and quality, product availability, and purchasing methods. Negotiation is a critical part of being a buyer. The buyer needs to negotiate informal and/or contract purchases that are fair to the food service and vendor. First, the buyer needs to be well prepared with information about products needed in the food service operation which they will be used. Secondly, the buyer needs to work closely with production and service staff to ensure they understand the operational needs and limitations of the food service organization. Ethics in purchasing. Buyers may be subjected to bribes and other kinds of inducements to influence buying decisions. An example of our book gave of collusion, which is a secret arrangement or understanding between the buyer and seller for fraudulent purposes, would be a kickback, where the buyer accepts something of value, money or merchandise, from the vendor in exchange for a sale. Less obvious examples given were free samples, gifts, or free lunches. The structure of purchasing varies depending on the size and type of organization. In centralized purchasing, the purchasing department is responsible for purchasing needed supplies for all units of the organization. Also, the authority to buy some product is delegated to the food service. This type of purchasing is super cost-effective and time-saving. A potential disadvantage of centralized purchasing is the friction that can develop between the purchasing department and food service unit if there is not clear understanding of decision-making authority, especially on quality standards. Some food service directors choose group or co-op purchasing to increase their volume for a lower price. A great example from our textbook are hospitals. In a metro area, a few hospitals may combine their purchases to obtain lower prices and possibly more favorable service arrangements. In co-op purchasing, the members are usually units of a larger system. The main advantage of this purchasing is the price advantage with increased volume which may attract more prospective vendors. There's also the freedom of not having to meet with sales reps or going through admin work, which saves a great deal of time. The buyer in this type of purchasing is selected by the members. The purchasing service is generally supported by a fee paid by each institution based on a percentage of the orders. A GPO is a group purchasing organization. It represents member organizations and oversees the purchasing function of the entire organization. GPOs negotiate with and select a list of vendors for all categories of needs for the member institutions. So this is overall cost savings for the organization rather than individual units. Vendors and food distributors. Vendors are suppliers. The two most common categories of vendors in food service are broadline and specialty vendors. A specialty vendor usually carries a limited product line. An example may be a specialty vendor who only carries meat or only carries fresh produce. Broadline vendors carry large inventories and attempts to meet all the needs of a single vendor. They also like to carry chemicals, paper products, and equipment. Vendors can be located through the internet, other food service operators, trade journals, publications, trade shows. The buyer should carefully evaluate the scope of products and services by making inquiries into the vendor's product line, available services, and the reliability in meeting contract specifications.
Alrighty. All right, so let's talk about methods of purchasing. There are two types of purchasing. The informal type is also called open market buying, which is used in smaller operations. It's where vendors offer what's called a price quotation to the buyer, and the contracts are written through multiple modes of communication, including faxing, phone calls with sales representatives, and through computer communication, which is the most popular for today. Then there's formal purchasing, which is also called competitive bid buying. It's similar to informal purchasing. It's where the buyer sets standards and for quality, and then multiple vendors bid on it. The contract is most often given to the vendor that meets the standards and has the best price. Some of the pros of formal bid buying are that the well-written contracts minimize the chance for miscommunication. It's really good for products like canned goods, frozen foods, and staples, and other non-perishable items. Some of the cons include you can't really use it for perishable items since there's too much price fluctuation in the market. It's also very time consuming as everything has to be done very far in advance. It can also foster manipulation within the system. Some food purchasing variations of these two types of systems include in advance purchasing, which is where a contract promises to buy certain products over a specific period of time at their fair market value. There's firm fixed pricing, which promises a certain amount of goods for a set price. This is riskier for vendors because it does not account for changes in the market. So if a price of a food goes up in the market, the buyer does not pay any more to the vendor. There's also cost plus purchasing, which is a contract between a buyer and a vendor that promises to buy specific goods from one vendor for a specific period of time. So that's good for buying some product in bulk, but you're not going to buy that product from any other vendors during that time.